had told me about something that you experienced when you were
Right.
younger, although it hasn't been something that's been on your mind as an adult.
Well,
Is that true?
Yeah, it is true. And
Okay.
it would be fair to say that I don't have an extraordinary interest in the field, although, and I feel uncomfortable with the idea that that I experienced something that could be classified as seeing an unidentified flying object, but that's what it was. It was a flying object that was definitely unidentifiable.
Yeah, well, I'm a retired carpenter. I live here in Ferguson, and I'm 76 years old, and that's about it.
And you're a veteran, right?
I'm a
World War II.
veteran. Yeah, I'm was in the Air Force for 5 years, and I flew in B-17 bombers, and I was shot down over France, and I was in the French resistance for 8 months.
It was a summer evening, and it was an old country road, and we had been coming home from my aunt's house, and we had stopped at a stoplight, or a stop sign, and I thought it looked like a car light in the sky, and so we stopped the car, and my mom stuck her head out the window and was looking, and she couldn't figure out what it was. So she decided to shut off her lights to see if she could see it better. So she did, and they shut off that bright light and turned on red and blue flashing lights around it. And then, so my mom got frightened. So she turned her lights back on, and they turned his light back on and shut the red and blue flashing lights off.
Well, what happened was one night my mother and I were taking my sister home, and she lives out in an area where at the time it was kind of a little more rural. They had she lived in a subdivision that was out kind of close to the river, and we were taking her home in the evening, her and her small son. And when we pulled into her driveway, she was in the back seat, I was driving, and my mom was sitting next to me in the passenger seat. When we pulled into the driveway, there was this great, huge red-orange light in the sky. And my mom saw it, and I saw it. My sister didn't see it. She was fumbling around in the back seat, getting her baby all ready to take inside and everything. My mom said, she said, "Janet, do you see that?" And I said, "Yeah, I see it." And it was like I was mesmerized on this light in the sky. And she said, "You keep your eye on it. I'm going to walk Kathy inside."
And then when we drove off, it like slowly was behind us. My mother was flooring the car. She was so scared. But it was right behind us, and then we got to my grandma and grandpa's house about 2 miles away, and we went in. My mother had went inside to tell everybody to come out to see the UFO, and as soon as we got out there, it was gone. It had disappeared.
Well, when I was approximately 9 or 10, or around the May time frame of 64, 65, I had an event where my brother came in about 6:15 in the morning and woke me up to relay to me that someone was trying to break into his bedroom. And I, at the time, thought he was just pulling my leg, but he was very scared and wanted to go check it out, wanted me to go with him to check this out. So we lived in the back end of the house where the bedrooms were. We started to walk down the hallway. When we got to the living room area, he pointed to the drapes where the living room wall, which was a wall of windows, but it was all draped, and said, "Look." And as I spun around to look at the drapes, I didn't see anything. So again, I was thinking that he was just teasing me and trying to make me think something was happening. And I asked him, "What did he see?" And he said he saw a shadow that was of a person standing against the window. And when he told me to look, the shadow had actually just drifted back away from the window at a fairly rapid rate.
I was 18 years old. I was a senior in high school, and a friend of mine and I were out fishing out at Alton Dam. And we'd go out there during the evening hours, and we'd snag for fish, like catfish and buffalo and whatever else you might snag. And we were having a fine time, just very relaxing, just, you know, being out there near the water, and we noticed a bright light. If you look down from the dam and downstream, there was a light. It was kind of a crimson, reddish, pinkish. It was a bright light. It looked like a colored spotlight that might be sitting on a barge in the middle of the river, because it was way downstream, but it was right in the middle of the river.
So when she came back out, she said she looked at me and she said, "It's still there." And I said, "Yes, it's still there." And so she said, "Well, why don't you move over and I'll drive and you keep your eye on it." So we moved over and she got into the car, and I kept my eye on it. And as we pulled out of the driveway and started driving down the road, it sort of started gliding right along with us, and it was totally silent. It made no sound at all, and it just sort of moved along right along the treetops as our car moved down the road. And when we got to a certain point in the road where there was a dip, we dipped down, and when we came back up on this little hill, it was gone, and we've never seen it since.
At that time, I suggested, why don't we go out in the backyard and see if there's anything going on. We thought it was probably a prowler at that time, was our thoughts. So we let the dog out the back door. We went into the garage, went out the back door of the garage, and as we got about 10 steps outside the back door of the garage, we heard a large humming noise, much like a high-power voltage line. And as we looked up in the sky, just maybe 50 feet away, or probably within 25 feet of us and about 10 to 15 feet off the ground, there was a landing craft hovering in the sky, about 6 feet long by about 4 feet wide and about 3 feet high. It's like a rounded box, bright orange, with blue corrugated, almost like a dryer, hose out of the back of a dryer, landing gear, 4 of these things coming down with black suction cups on the bottom and brown crossbars on the landing gear. It looked very much like a landing craft, and my first recollection staring at it as it stood there in the sky was there was no visible means of propulsion on it other than this high hum like a power line, and it looked like something that was man-made. But this was 1964-65, so I don't know that our government had the technology at that time to build this kind of craft.
You can definitely see this light. Well, it was just standing there. Well, it seemed like in an instant this light shot out from what we thought it was sitting on a barge, and the first thing that we thought was that it was a flare, because it looked like the color of a flare gun, and it came shooting towards us. And as a matter of fact, we jumped back a little bit because it was about a quarter of a mile away, but it came up to us very quickly. We kind of jumped back thinking that this was a flare at first, and of course this is happening very quickly. We were very surprised when it stopped right in front of us.
Did it make any sound?
Nope. My mother had rolled down the window to see, and it didn't have any sound to it.
No sound.
No, because you'd think it had a humming to it, but it didn't.
The reason I ask you if it had any sound, because a lot of times when people see things, if it's a helicopter or something that can hover, stay there in the air. Did it stay right in one place?
Yeah. It looked like it was hanging by a string. So it was just like, kind of dangling there. Just, it wasn't really still.
So it made a little motion.
A little, yeah.
We froze for probably 60 seconds as we just stared with our jaws dropping. And then I said to my brother, I'm going to go in the house and get the camera and I'll be right back. So I ran to the garage, went into the garage, to the main door, to the house, and I started to knock on the door. And I noticed that there was like a blip in time where something like skipped a frame, but I didn't think much of it. And about 5 minutes later, my older brother came and opened the door and let me in. I went in, passed him, he said, "What's up?" I said nothing, went in, grabbed the camera, ran back out. At that time I saw my brother standing on the swing set, on the top of the swing set. He climbed up the slide to the top and was staring off to the west. And I asked him what had happened. And he said, well, the craft sat there for a few seconds after you left, and then all of a sudden it started to slowly drift away and then went shooting off into the western sky. Very quickly, it was gone, completely gone.
And then we knew immediately that this was not a flare. This was, it was moving towards us too quick to have been a light on a boat, because it was just in a flash. We're talking maybe 3 seconds to go a quarter of a mile up river. And this thing was not attached to anything. It wasn't a light. It was a self-suspending, it looked like a big ball of crimson light. And it just stopped there. And it hovered. And it was about the size of a, I'd say a beach ball, about the size of a beach ball. And it just, and you can see it just hovering there and kind of waving back and forth. And about the time we looked at one another, totally amazed, and we knew both of us were thinking in our minds, what the heck is this thing? It shot up into the air, and it just kept going. I mean, kept going. We kept watching, and this was very quick. It took off like a rocket. No flames or anything coming up, but just that sphere of crimson light until we couldn't see it anymore. It was a clear night, so you can see the stars, and this thing just kept going. It looked almost like a firework, for some kind of a fireworks explosion, except this thing just kept going and going and going and going until it just went beyond, our vision.
I was sitting on my front porch, and I looked out. Just from my flying time, interested in flying. I look up the minute I go out of the house. I look up. That's the first thing I do is look up. And I sat there and I looked up, and there it is. It was to me it was a UFO, but I say it wasn't. It's not a phenomenon to me. It's a part of nature, another part of nature. But there it was, nevertheless, and it looked like an old. What it looked like was an old lemon squeezer. And all I know is that I was looking at it, and it was standing dead still in the sky, and it was about 3,000 feet. It was right in the glide path of Lambert Field, and it moved. This only was a matter of maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and as it passed by this big tree, it like you snap your finger and it was gone. It's like as if it was went into a hole or something, or a door opened up and it went into the door, and that's what it was. And that's what it was. And to this day, I'm saying it was what people call a UFO.
The stories you have just heard are true, but they are not the complete story. Witnessing a UFO is often only the beginning of a mind-expanding journey.